Yo, what's up, cool kids? It's time for Batman No Man's Land No Man podcast, where we're finally finishing up Volume Trace of No Man's Land. Pretty much, I think we have like one more issue left in this in our order, but it Volume Three's done. So we got two issues to talk about, two kind of two one-offs really, and I'll let the floor speak. I'm Mike, joined alongside by.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Vincent.
We've only done this almost 30 times.
Alphabetical. All right, Michael, take us away. We've got two one-off stories, and let's dive into the first one.
Okay, our first issue this episode is Legends of the Dark Knight number 124, Captain of Industry, written by Chuck Dixon, drawn by Raphael Kianan. The cover's by Jordan Raskin. It's a pretty neat cover of Batman fighting off what appear to be zombies. So this issue begins. A man named Flowers is paying a gangster with a box full of money and jewels because he's heard he has a way out of Gotham somehow. And this gangster, he accepts the payment and he has his goons take him to his secret railroad service tunnel. Except, surprise, there's no railroad tunnel. It's actually a dark room full of zombies who promptly consume him. We then learn that this gangster's name is Shank, and he tells his girlfriend what his deal is. He's collecting valuables, which are worthless in No Man's Land, but his logic is, it's not going to be No Man's Land forever. Sooner or later, all this crap will be over, and the stuff will be worth money then, so I'll sell it then. So he's just sitting on all these valuables that he's taking from people in exchange for getting them out of Gotham. Which, anyway. So then we see Batman's looking for this Danny Flowers fellow for some reason. I can't remember if I've ever met him before, if he's an actual character or some criminal guy. The thug he beats up tells him that, I heard this guy called Shank smuggled him out of Gotham. During this fight, there's also a kind of neat little bit where a sniper's aiming a crossbow at him, and Batgirl saves Batman from that, but she's like standing on the crossbow or something. But so Batman investigates this. Shank's running this little stall thing where he trades for valuables, and he's visited, and his latest customer is Matches Malone, Batman's famous mustache gangster alter ego who he disguises as to get information sometimes. It's always a fun plot element to see used. So he says, I hear you can smuggle me out of Gotham. He buys his ticket out of Gotham with a bunch of money or valuables or something. And like Flowers, he gets pushed into the zombie room, and he quickly finds his hat, realizes that guy's dead. Now, Batman seems to pick up on what the reader has not picked up on yet at this point, which is that these people are not actually zombies. They're just regular people. They're definitely drawn very zombie-like. They even have green skin in a couple panels at least. But first of all, Batman makes a quick costume change at some point in this sequence, which is kind of amusing, but he keeps like saying, let me help you, but they're like, no, meat, we want to eat you. We briefly see that Shank's got this little vegetable garden going. He's got people forced to gunpoint to tend it for him. That doesn't really come up again. Meanwhile, Shank's girlfriend sneaks into his vault, steals a necklace, and at the same exact time, Batman breaks out of the zombie room, overpowers Shank and the goons, and sets the zombies free, but they're not zombies. By this point, it's become apparent that, oh, they're just the earliest victims of Shank's con. He was just he was just locking people in this room at first. There weren't any zombies or anything to attack them. He was just throwing them in the room, and they ended up like getting so starved that they ended up eating the later victims of the con. So yeah, they're just emaciated, starved victims of this con who resorted to cannibalism, and because of that, they appear like zombies. So yeah, it's a pretty dark reveal. And then we get this kind of this little coda of Shank's girlfriends out on the street, desperately trying to trade her necklace for some food. Unfortunately, the necklace is worth nothing because it's no man's land. Yeah, I thought this is a decent one-off, not all that memorable, but it was fine. I did like the art a good deal, except the one thing that was kind of strange about it to me was that they chose to give Batman the prominent shoulder horns, but this was a more realistic, not that stylized art style, so it looked a little too literal, I thought, like kind of strange and off-putting. But and yeah, the whole starving people who seem like zombies but aren't was kind of a strangely communicated plot point, I thought. You guys' thoughts on this issue?
Yeah. So real quick, Raphael Cannon. He was a longtime artist on some of like DC's like BC level books in the '80s. He did a bunch of Firestorm and Captain Atom, and then other than that, his most famous work is a reboot of the Conan books in the mid '90s at Marvel, and he had like a cool, like slightly exaggerated style there. I'm hoping Marvel, with the Conan license back, will soon reprint that. But I mean, I didn't think he was super impressive here. This is a couple of years after that Conan stuff, and he's not really doing any regular work by this point, to my knowledge. And I don't know whether to put this on him or on the script or just the entire premise of the story. But I found this whole zombies concept very confusing because I couldn't tell like how much was supposed to be surrealist and how much we were supposed to be faked out by, because almost the entire story, like in my opinion, pretty literally pushes them forward as these are zombies, like, or at least like close to that, like they or like turned like fiendish and cannibalistic and stuff like that. Like they're literally colored green in a lot of sequences. Even when they get out of the cave, I believe there are sequences where it looks like they're like decomposing parts of their bodies, and they do literally want to eat Bruce. And even when he's like, "I can save you," like none of them react to him up until the very end, and they're still speaking in like one word sentences. I don't know, that part of the story, which is like the crux of the story, was really rough to me. I like the idea, like the concept of a character within no man's land like Shank, where he's like grifting people, and his whole hope is, he's hoarding all this stuff which is not valuable within no man's land but is outside. So when things eventually reconnect or the market turns around, then he'll be able to ridiculously capitalize on that. I like that concept. Obviously I like seeing Matches Malone, even though like he doesn't do any detective. It's just, here's a shitty disguise that I can use. And I like the like little morality twist in the end where the betraying girlfriend is begging with pearls. But the entire zombie thing just threw me off and kind of ruined any appeal that I had.
Yeah, semi agree. I liked more so that this was a one-off that actually had Batman in it. We've had a bunch of one-offs that are just kind of about people in no man's land or just kind of not a great overall creative team with like first time writers on comics. So this was a little bit, for me at least, more of a back on track kind of what I want kind of thing. Not stellar, not great, but passable, and I think miles better than like the things that we were reading in like maybe the previous 2 episodes.
Yeah, so that's that. Not much more to say. So I will go a little behind the scenes and say that we're recording 2 episodes in a row, 34 and 35. This was the weakest issue of our reading by far for me, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not terrible.
Yeah.
And we'll move into the second one-off for this episode, Shot of the Bat number 92. This is called Stormy Weather, and the creative team is Devin Grayson, Dale Eaglesham, who we've seen, I think, together as well previously. But the concept here is that Superman, despite, a while back we saw Superman show up and interact with Batman, and Batman was like, hey, go away. Like, I have this under control, or you're just going to complicate it for me, etc. It was actually a pretty clever issue, which we discussed. So go check that out. But Superman is back for some reason, and he's there's like a funny little joke in the beginning where he flies in and he's flying and fast. And so he causes a breeze, and he switches up into beat up clothes in a phone booth. And he's just like walking around, and he runs into a guy, gives his name as Cal, and gives farming advice, which this is a really cool moment. I feel like it makes sense because it's not going to come up often at all, but I really like the concept of seeing Clark show his knowledge and skills from his farming background and just from like the rural childhood that he had. So he's telling this guy, like, split this part of the seed or whatever, or the husk thing, to help the seeds grow, and you need this amount, you're missing the water or whatever. And I think it's handled pretty well. I mean, I'm not a farmer, so this could all be 100% bullshit. But as far as the way Devin Grayson presents it as someone who has no background like that, it came off totally credible and compelling to me. But he runs into, so he has this old man that he's hanging out with, this farmer, and they're going to go to another farm in this neighborhood. And he also runs into a young woman who seems to be working for Oracle, but it's like kind of like her connection isn't totally clear. Like maybe she's like a tryout position or something as a scout. And so you have these 3 kind of misfits, including Clark, in just walking around no man's land, and they come across Petite's raggedy gang, which I think was interesting here. I haven't noticed that closely in previous appearances, whether this was the case, but here, like, all their uniforms and clothes are just like ripped to shreds, and they look a lot more like a vigilante and off the wall group than the Blue Boys, even within the status quo. And there's a little scuffle. Superman stops a bullet from hitting one of his new friends, and Batman also shows up in the lickety-split time to stop it from going further and them like breaking their hands on Clark's face. And then the 2 no-name characters, they run off, and Bruce and Clark have time to have a little conversation. And there's a cool kind of like over analytical detective moment where Bruce basically breaks down Clark's disguise and is like, hey, you still smell like deodorant and laundry, and even though your shirt's all ripped up, there's no like sweat and stuff like that, but also no one's going to notice any of that or pay attention to it. And then there's like some discussion of like some threat, which is what brought Superman here. There's like a drone thing and biological warfare. And then it's very unclear. It's like that's set up as this is why I'm here. And then there's like a page where Superman flies and Batman runs into like a building or alley. And then they continue the conversation. And I'm pretty certain the implication here is that in that one page, Superman takes care of the thing, and maybe Batman helps him or does a little side thing while he's waiting for Superman to be back, even though it's lickety split. And I think that's the case. And I think the point is just that even though that's the point of why Superman's here, the point of this issue is just their conversation, and reaffirming why Superman isn't this perfect solution for No Man's Land. So we didn't need to see a stupid drone and biological warfare with Superman punching them out of the sky or whatever. Though, I mean, if you wanted to do that in 2 pages in a Superman issue, sure, a little tight tie-in. And then your conversation ends. There's also a little bit of shakiness where, like, there's discussion of like, hey, I should have that kryptonite, but they're mostly joking. And then they have a handshake. Superman flies away, and back to the farming stuff. It's suddenly raining because I guess, I don't know, he did something with his powers to affect the clouds, which he acknowledged earlier. I was a fan of this issue. Really like the farming thing. Always love a good, actual, in-depth conversation between Bruce and Clark. I like the whole disguise thing. And that's pretty much it. It's pretty much a not a redo, but a reaffirmation or coda to the last time we saw Superman. And I thought it added to that rather than totally recycled or was a complete waste of time.
Yeah, I agree with most of that. It was a good issue. For some reason, I didn't pick up on. I was really confused by the Batman Superman both using infrared vision thing, but what you've said with like, oh, they probably just neutralized the threat off page. That makes sense. With what was it, guys? Yeah, I really liked the stuff with Clark going undercover in No Man's Land, not as Superman or Clark technically. The farming stuff was great. What was Batman referring to in that one line? Talking about the kryptonite. There's a part where he says something like, "Oh, that time you tried to rule the world recently," or something like that. Like, any idea what that was referring to? Or
No, I don't know, but I read it for whatever sense this makes. I didn't have the time to go back and check what was going on in the Superman books at that time. But yeah, overall, just a fantastically well done issue. We're getting into much better content. We've seen Superman twice now, and I think both times we've liked his appearances. But piggybacking on everything Vince already said, yeah, just a great issue exploring both of these characters. Not entirely happy, like saying they're Bruce being like, we're not the same. We just want the same thing. No, they're friends. Just let them be friends. You muted yourself, you dunce.
Yeah, we are slowly inching towards the home stretch, so it does seem like we have better quality. So that's that. These 2 issues, both more or less thumbs up from us. Thanks for watching this episode. And tune in next time. And Fabian wants to be Superman. And we will leave on that note.
I mean, who wouldn't?